This is the human side of the story. Earlier in the show, it was our pleasure to have Anaheim Ducks GM Pat Verbeek joining us. And anytime I see general manager that played for you at one time, I wonder what sort of Neil Smith hints and things that you have learned on the job, what you've passed on to them.
Well, I think most of them just basically watched and then did the opposite. And that's why they're being successful now. No, but Pat was a great player. He's doing a good job in Anaheim, did a good job in Tampa as Steve Yzerman's assistant GM, and did a good job in Detroit as a scout for the Red Wings. Did you know that he's one of the few NHL players to have scored 500 goals, but one of only four of those that are eligible, but they're not members of the Hall of Fame. So they're eligible to be in the Hall of Fame, but there's only four of them that have scored 500 goals or more, and Pat's one of them. He grew up in Ontario, in Petrolia, Ontario, which is a little town just beside Sarnia, Ontario. And Sarnia, Ontario, for those Americans that are listening, is at the border of Michigan, right across from Port Huron, Michigan. So that's where Pat grew up. At 15 years old, he played junior B hockey. 15. Like that's amazing. He was selected by the Devils 43rd overall in the 1982 entry draft. And he helped the Devils to their very first playoff berth in 88 when John McClain got that famous goal. And he scored the club record of 46 goals. And that held until 2006 when Brian Gionta broke that record with 48 goals. Something that I've always remembered about Pat, because it was one of a kind thing, he lost one of his thumbs, believe it or not, in a farming accident when it was cut off by an auger. And his dad and his brother were able to help save the thumb by rushing him to the hospital and having it reattached. And then he did extensive rehabilitation, of course, to make it so that he could continue playing. He got traded from the Devils to the Hartford Whalers in 88, 89, and he led the team in goal scoring. And in his second year in Hartford, he was the team MVP. He was named captain of the Hartford Whalers, and then from there he got traded to the New York Rangers. And here's an interesting one for you that I should have brought up with Pat on the air. When I traded a first-round pick for Pat Verbeek, that first-round pick ended up being SebastienGiguere, who was the goalie for the Anaheim Ducks when they won the Cup. So Pat Verbeek was basically traded for the goalie who won the Cup for his franchise.
And who won the Conn Smythe in a losing effort for the Ducks when they lost to the Devils.
There you go. And that all came because I traded for Pat Verbeek, so I'm responsible for all of it.
I guess you are.
He signed with Detroit Red Wings after winning a Stanley Cup with the Dallas Stars. He went there in Detroit. He passed the 1,000-point mark. He scored his 500th goal and moved into the top 25 in career goal scoring before returning to Dallas for his final season in 01-02. I didn't realize that he had been a color analyst for the Red Wings for a little stint right after his career was over. And then he started to work for Steve Yzerman and as a scout. And I think also for Ken Holland. Ken Holland was still there when he started as a scout. And then when Steve Yzerman went to Tampa, Pat Verbeek went with him to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and where he was named assistant general manager. And then in February 2022, he was named general manager of the Anaheim Ducks, which is a position that he still holds now. Another interesting bit of trivia. Patrick Kane, yes, that Patrick Kane, lived with Pat Verbeek and his family in 2003 after relocating to Detroit, Michigan to play for the Honey Baked 16U team. AAA hockey team, and Kane credits Pat Verbeek as a mentor, and he even emulated his playing style. What a compliment that is to Pat Verbeek from Patrick Kane. So that's the wonderful career of Pat Verbeek, the hockey player turned hockey analyst, turned hockey scout, turned assistant GM, turned GM of the Anaheim Ducks.
I want to ask you a question about the GM role, but first, just to kind of tie up a loose end here, that the other 3 500 goal scorers, besides Verbeek, that are not in the Hockey Hall of Fame, Keith Tkachuk, Peter Bondra, and Patrick Marleau. So let me ask you here, because currently there are 13 general managers that have played in the NHL at one time or another. There are others that have played in the AHL, college hockey. But for a former player, the learning curve to understand the business and eventually end up as a general manager has to be different than people that have come from hockey operations side. I mean, we've got some unique stories out there also of Kyle Davidson in Chicago as an intern at the start of his career. We've got Kyle Dubas in Pittsburgh and Eric Tulsky in Carolina that are analytics people. So where do you see the difference for somebody that was a former player having to learn the business to the point that they are elevated and competent to the point they can assume a role of a general manager in the National Hockey League?
I think people like Verbeek and Yzerman are outliers. Normally, successful NHL players don't have the patience to learn the front office management and how it works and how you scout players and how you have meetings and how you cross over, meaning you may be living in the West, you have to see the players in the East. You may be living in the East, you got to go see the European players. They don't have the patience because they think that they should just go right into being GM and that it's not that hard. And Steve Yzerman and now Pat Verbeek are anomalies because they put their time into learning their craft. And I think that's what's really important. Somebody like myself, who was a college player who ended up starting out scouting and then and continued scouting all the way through and many years in Detroit and then got the GM job, I already knew how it all worked because I'd been doing it for years. And so I think that's the difference. I think that a lot of times these ex-players don't want to put the time in that it takes to really understand how to run a team.
I know I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but you could also extend that to the coaching ranks. That how many superstars in the NHL have had genuine success behind the bench? And we could look at Wayne Gretzky. We could look at Patrick Roy, who had moderate success at best.
Yes. And I think because everything comes so natural to those guys. If they do it they have this unbelievable talent that superstars do that they use during their playing career. And they've never really studied the game the way the guys like Joel Kenville had to study the game, for example, who's become one of the winningest coaches in NHL history, but was just a run-of-the-mill defenseman in the NHL. And so, it's very hard for guys who have these natural abilities to really go and have a workman's understanding of the game because it just came so natural to them.
Pat Verbeek always worked hard as a player, and you could see it in his work now as a general manager. And we thank him for joining us today. This is our last wraparound of 2024-25 because when we come back, in a week. We're already looking forward to next season. Can you believe it?
Yeah. So we're going into year 3 pretty soon. We started this endeavor in late January of 2024 with Wayne Gretzky. And here we are almost midway now through June of 2025. So it's been almost exactly a year and a half.
Time has flown, and we have had fun doing this as well.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.